Hello again. Thanks for clicking on this video. We hope it's helpful to you. Today we're going to be talking about agricultural pumps and how to properly time them to remove them for service, and then how to reinstall them once you're done. So let's get started. So we're talking about agricultural pumps, and I wanted to point out a couple of things that I think are relevant. Most of you out there, you have probably a John Deere, which is what this is fitted to. This is an injection pump, an industrial injection pump off of a Lincoln Continental. You can tell that they're essentially the same pump. Reinstallation, which became Stanadyne, they use this basic premise in practically all of their applications from the 60s on up to the 90s. When they begin to add emissions-related items is when a lot of this substantially changed. So for the purposes of this video, you could apply this to most any rotary style Reinstallation pump manufactured in those time periods. Okay, so on the John Deere applications, which we have here, a couple things I want to point out to you. First off, I get questioned a lot, what are some signs that I may have a bad injection pump? And I'm going to toss out some of the top things. You can always call us if you have a particular question and you want to kind of run it by one of our techs. The number will be listed below. Primarily what we see in John Deere applications is what we call governor ring failure. And the symptom of that is you'll go out, you start your tractor, it'll run for sometimes 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then it slowly bogs down and shuts down. Wait a minute, you can start it back, and it'll do the same thing over and over again. And what happens there is there's a component in here called a governor ring, and when it starts to break up, that material will clog the return system, building up housing pressure, and that's why the pump shuts down. So if you have, anytime you have a starting problem or you have a dying problem, it's almost always the injection pump. There are some tests that you can do that you can call us, or we can also provide you with that information. But anytime you have a starting problem or a shutdown problem, the injection pump is suspect. So give you a few pointers that will hopefully make this go smoothly for you. The first thing I always recommend is the night before you're going to do the work, get you a can of penetrating oil, hit your mounting bolts, just douse them really good with penetrating oil. Go ahead and hit your injectors, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Obviously you want to, the line bolts, you want to hit those with penetrating oil. Just to give you a little bit of extra help, because sometimes these pumps have been on for 10 or 15 years, and that metal adhesion can be a bit of a struggle. So that's the first step. Secondly, with regard to the injectors, you're going to be barring this engine over by hand. It's going to be a lot simpler if you pull the injectors. Also, I always recommend having your injector serviced when you have an injection pump serviced. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've talked to customers who have an injection pump rebuilt, but they still have a sluggish start, or they don't have the power they think they need. And then they'll send a set of injectors in, and we'll find sometimes just the pressure's off. So that just has to be reset. Sometimes they have to be rebuilt. But simply put, you have to kind of look at the system in totality. You don't want to rebuild an injection pump, get it back to factory specs, and pair it with 20-year-old injectors. It's just not, you're not going to get your optimum performance. Also, when you're barring that engine over by hand, if you try to battle the compression ratio, which you will if you have the injector still installed, you're going to need some big old forearms. And so to make it easy on yourself, penetrating oil, do penetrating oil on the injectors. First step out of the gate the next day is go ahead and pull those injectors out, and then we can get ready to time the pump before you remove it. So now that you've done your prep work and you're ready to physically pull the injection pump, what you want to do is you want to get the injection pump in time before you remove it. Now let me address Murphy's Law. I get customers all the time who don't pre-time the pump before they remove it. It's not the end of the world. It just creates a little bit more work on the back end. We can talk about that. But essentially, if you can do this beforehand, it's just going to make your life easier. So you've done your pre-work, you're ready to get the pump in time. What you're going to do is you're going to locate the nameplate of the injection pump. It probably will have Reinstallation or Stanadyne on it and some numbers stamped in. Just below that or to the side of it is a timing window. And as there's two panhead screws, you're going to take that off. And what you're going to see inside is two metal rings. One is fixed. It always stays in the window. And the other rotates with the engine. Now, again, remember the pump turns half engine speed. So if you rotate your engine once and then you say, oh, I didn't see a mark, you've only gone halfway around in the injection pump. So you got to do the whole process over again. And what you're basically going to do with your injectors out, you're not going to be battling as much compression. Still going to take a little bit of effort. Quick side note, please do not use your starter to try to bump it over, a lot of people like to say. First off, it rotates too fast for you to even see the mark. And secondly, it's just not good to do that, to use the starter in that manner. So get you a pull bar, just kind of bar it over by hand. And all you're basically going to do is you're going to watch the second plate rotate. And when you see the timing mark, you're going to line those two lines up. At that point, your tractor's in time and your pump is in time and your pump's ready to be removed. You're going to remove your three mounting nuts. You're going to remove your lines, your fuel supply and fuel return. You're going to remove those. I do recommend capping those off. Certainly your fuel supply. I've had instances where gravity takes over and all the fuel runs out. You don't want that to happen. So plug everything off. Make sure you keep all of your fittings together. And once you've got it to this point, you just simply slide the pump back and it's ready to be serviced. Okay, so you've got your injection pump serviced, hopefully by Diesel Care, and you're ready to reinstall it. I referenced a couple of tools that will make the installation process a little bit easier for you, and I'd like to discuss those now. The first tool, remember when you pulled the injection pump off, the shaft stayed with the gear. And you probably saw that there were two umbrella seals that were here and here. Now this is, we call them an umbrella seal for obvious reasons. And the seals are designed to go back to back on the shaft. So you're sealing fuel on one side and you're keeping engine oil from transferring into the injection pump. So these seals need to be replaced. I get a lot of guys who they want to take a shortcut and not do that. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. The material that the seals are made of, when they're exposed to the elements while the pump's being serviced, they're going to tend to swell and get distorted, and it's going to be almost impossible to get those back in. So the first tool you're going to want to look into is a part number 13362, and that's basically a cone that goes over the shaft for you to install the seals. All you're going to do is you're going to get a pair of wire snips, you're going to clip the old ones off, go ahead and clean the shaft good and clean with a shop rag. And you're going to want to have some type of a petroleum lubricant, either engine oil or a pre-lube of some kind, even Vaseline or petroleum jelly. But you're going to want to kind of lube the shaft, you're going to lube the cone, and then that's going to make for a pretty easy installation of the shaft seals. So you're going to use this tool here, and you're basically going to slide the seals over. Now obviously you want to orientate the seals, and think about this beforehand. You're going to put the seal closest to the gear on first, and the seal is going to, the outer edge of the seal is going to point toward the gear. And then the second seal, you're going to reverse it, and the outer edge is going to point towards the injection pump, and you're going to put those two on, and then you'll be ready to install the pump onto the shaft. So now that you've got your seals installed on your shaft, quick side note, when you get your pump serviced by Diesel Care, these parts will come back with it. It includes those two new shaft seals, your line washers for your injection lines, and your timing cover window gasket. So you'll want to hang on to those. Those are going to be important as far as the installation. Now, I mentioned earlier that it was virtually impossible to get the injection pump 180 out. That is only applicable if you listen to the next sentence very closely. This shaft has an orientation dot on the end of it. Every Stanadyne shaft for this model pumps has an orientation dot. There is a corresponding dot down inside the injection pump. You've got to line those up dot to dot. If you do that, you're not going to be 180 out. So you want to make sure that you're lined up dot to dot. And I had some customers ask, and they say, well, the slot's not quite right. What do I do? Very simple. Just grab you a big flathead screwdriver, put it down inside the injection pump, and just gently kind of turn it until it's aligned up. You'll then start to install the injection pump, and what you're going to do is you're going to begin to slide it over the shaft. And the second tool that I mentioned that you would need is a part number 13371. And what that tool essentially does is that first seal that the pump comes into contact with, because the outer edge is facing towards the pump, we've got to clamp that down so it'll fit in this pilot tube. Now, you've already lubricated the shaft, you've lubricated the seals, but you're going to want to have that tool. You're going to clamp it down, and it is going to allow for easy transfer into the injection pump. The second seal, obviously, just by its natural shape and the way it's positioned on the shaft, it's going to go in easy. So you'll want to get those tools. Now, I have some people say, well, I'm only doing this one time. I don't want to buy a lot of expensive tools. I get it. I understand. Sometimes you can work that chamfered edge in with an O-ring pick. I've done it in a pinch myself. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, but sometimes you have to go with what you got, and I certainly understand that. But if you have the time and the resources, go ahead and get the tools to do the job properly. So now you've come back to the portion of you want to get everything properly timed. And again, you're going to have your timing marks in your window. You slide the injection pump on, and it might be a tad bit off. Perfectly fine. That's why we have these oblong holes for mounting. That allows for about a 5-degree window for proper installation of the injection pump and to line those lines up perfectly. So what you're going to do is you're going to get it on. You're going to put your mounting nuts on hand tight. Look in that window. Get the two lines perfectly lined up. and go ahead and snug down your mounting bolts to the proper torque. Go ahead and put your lines on, and you're ready to install your supply and return lines and prime the pump and get back in the field. So thanks again for clicking this video and taking an interest. We really appreciate it. We hope this information has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to call us. Also, if you have suggestions for future videos, please put those in the comment section below. And always remember to like and subscribe, because we have a need to be liked and subscribed to. Once again, though, thank you for taking an interest in this and taking an interest in our company.
Go ahead.